Civil War soldiers had a rough time while serving their country. Being blown to bits while also having to eat hardtack doesn't sound like living the dream. Most people have never known or seen what the vigorous and daunting lifestyle of soldiers was like. These two high school boys set out on a mission for their fourth hour history project to bring these soldiers' daily lives to this classroom.
Their day begins at the crack of dawn. Their eyes are rested for the most part, but still bloodshot. The cries and horrors of the battles before still haunt their dreams in peace. Nevertheless, the drill sergeant and generals call them to action once again. Marching and fighting drill was part of the daily routine for the Civil War soldier. Infantry soldiers drilled in squads and in company formations, each man getting accustomed to orders and formations such as marching in columns and in a company front, how to face properly, dress the line, and interact with fellow soldiers. Discipline in the military was very strict. Petty offenses such as evading camp duty or not keeping equipment in good order were usually treated with extra duties such as digging latrines, chopping wood, or standing extra hours on guard duty. During their time marching through the field, wildlife and other critters made close encounters with the soldiers. Commonly coming across snakes, coyotes, deer, and rabbits, the soldiers would try to hunt and eat whatever they could find. Collecting water was a common task soldiers had to do. The majority of the water consumed and used by the soldiers wasn't even clean. Many diseases and viruses were spread through the water. Nearly two-thirds of both Confederate and Union deaths were due to some sort of illness. Many instances of diarrhea, colds, and pneumonia were prevalent among the soldiers.
Soldier bathing routines did not exist for the most part. With the only source of running water being a shallow creek, soldiers did not have the option to clean themselves well. Daily processes such as brushing your teeth, doing laundry, and bathing weren't widely accessible to most soldiers. Fishing was one of the methods soldiers used for catching food. With the abundance of creeks and rivers, soldiers would cast a line to pass the time and hopefully catch a decent fish. It's widely known that for the Civil War soldier, going hungry was about as common as hearing gunshots. Lots of the soldiers found themselves trying to find whatever food was around them. Throughout the war, soldiers faced all sorts of horrors and conflicts that changed the person that they were. After returning home to their families, a majority of the men had drastically changed either physically or emotionally. Many nights out in their camps not knowing whether or not they would survive to see another day is a terrible thing to go through. Mental illnesses like PTSD were very prevalent amongst the soldiers upon returning home. This affected their social lives at home and even restricted them from interacting with other people in general. Other injuries like amputation, head trauma, broken limbs, blood loss, and hearing loss scarred soldiers for the remainder of their lives. Even those would not have wanted to pay the ultimate sacrifice of losing their lives, like the many men who had fought besides them. Families and widows would struggle without the presence of a man in their household. Many would go into debt or have to face jail time due to not being able to pay for their expenses.
Leisurely activities were similar in both armies, and most of the time it was spent writing letters home. Soldiers were prolific letter writers and wrote home at every opportunity. It was the only way for them to communicate with the loved ones and inform the folks at home of their condition and where they were. Thrifty soldiers sent their pay home to support their families and kept only a small amount to see them through until the next payday. Free time was also spent in card games, reading, pitching horseshoes, or team sports. Often brawls would break out between the soldiers while they were playing team sports. Sometimes soldiers would still be bored even with all these opportunities. Even though having fun was something that they did, they all knew that the real reason they were there was to fight the harsh and bloody war. Activities were an escape from this hard-to-believe reality for the soldiers. One team sport that the soldiers liked to play was baseball. Baseball exploded in popularity due to the fact that the soldiers would play it during the war and then bring it to their hometowns. Many soldiers didn't have baseball gloves, so they had to use their bare hands. Usually, they came down open fields, so they had a vast expanse to play baseball in. Baseball bats were made out of whatever trees were available, so even though it wasn't the best, they made do with what they had.
At night, since they were outside, they would often need fires to warm them up on colder nights. Fires would usually come from the wood they harvest during the day. They'd sing songs, dance, and tell stories to pass the time and keep their minds at ease. Since most battling happened during the day, soldiers saw nighttime as another form of relaxation and peace. With their day coming to a close, the soldiers would shut their eyes and try to hold in what little peace they would get to experience.